Hi, today I'm going to be discussing a chapter from the book Global Environmental Politics. And this chapter is by Bill McKibben, and it's called Global Warming's Terrifying New Math. And Bill McKibben is well known around the world. He founded 350.org, and he is he's definitely one of the most outspoken people in the climate change movement, the new environmental movement right now. And he's taken a really interesting approach, an effective approach, which is putting out the numbers. And he has decades of scientific data backing up everything he says, and he's really on top of the newest data that's coming out as well. So he's a great source for staying with the trends of what's happening right now with climate change. And so in this chapter, it's a short chapter that where he presents three main numbers that we need to pay attention to right now. And so I'll break those down for you. The first number is 2 degrees Celsius, and this is the well-known number that came out of the Copenhagen Climate Conference in 2009, where the countries of the world came together and decided, okay, basically we need to, the most that temperatures can rise and not create complete catastrophe around the world is 2 degrees Celsius. And although Bill McKibben would argue that 2 degrees is way too high, and we will, at that level, that's actually a unsustainable and will create huge amounts of destruction on the earth. But nonetheless, that's what they agreed to at that time. And so that's about 2 degrees Celsius is about 3.6 degrees Fahrenheit. Since that time, since that climate accord in 2009, the global temperature has already risen 0.8%. And with that rise, we've already seen far more impact from temperature rise than the scientists initially estimated. And for example, the ocean acidity, the ocean is now 30% more acidic, and a third of the summer sea ice is gone. The facts could go, the figures and examples that could be mentioned could go on. But suffice it to say that we're seeing far more severe consequences than we initially thought that we could attribute to small increases of temperature. So the second number that he gives is 565 gigatons. And this is the amount of CO2 that we can dump into the atmosphere by mid-century and still stay within that 2 degrees Celsius rise. And it's not looking good on this front either. We've already increased the global temperatures by as I said earlier, 0.8%. And what McKibben says here is that the amount of CO2 we've already released into the atmosphere, that let's say we cut off CO2 emissions altogether right now, it's predicted according to models that it would lead to another 0.8% increase at least. So we're on track to, we're essentially already at 3/4 of the amount that we can release of the 565 gigatons of CO2 to stay within the 2 degrees. In this light, we're on track right now, according to the internet numbers from the International Energy Agency, to hit this number, 565 gigatons, within 16 years. And if we stay on track, we're also right on schedule to increase global temperatures by 6 degrees by the end of the century, which would be catastrophic. And McKibben says straight out of science fiction, the levels of impact that would have on countries around the world, on our climate, would be devastating. Entire countries would disappear with sea level rise and with yada yada. So the third number that he gives, I'll just keep going here. I'm going to try to keep some of the facts low and just stick to these 3 important numbers. First number was the 2 degrees Celsius. Second was the 565 gigatons. And the third number that he gives is 2,795 gigatons. And so 2,795 gigatons. And that is the amount of potential of CO2 release that's already owned by the petroleum industry. It's already in their portfolios. So they've already bought it. It's in the ground and it's on their asset sheets. Their investors know about it, and it largely determines the price of their stock, right? They have these reserves that they can mine and that they're going to put into the atmosphere. And the amount that they have is 5 times the amount of gigatons that we can safely that we can put into the atmosphere and stay within that initial 2 degrees Celsius. And the amount of this is obviously a huge problem, because how are you going to convince someone, and the energy industry, who owns, he says $27 trillion is what it's estimated that these reserves are worth. How do you keep that in the ground? And in order for us to stay on track to get on track to stay within 2 degrees by mid-century, 80% of those reserves would need to stay in the ground. And so because of this, he really takes on the energy, the petroleum and fossil fuel industry head on. He says this is our one enemy. This is who we, as environmentalists, as human beings who want to live on this planet, this is our enemy. And so he's done a lot of work fighting energy companies, and his biggest criticism is the unrestrained pollution break that they get, essentially not paying to release their waste. And so one of the big things that he's advocating for is carbon taxing and making it more expensive, driving up the cost of producing to the point where other forms of energy are a cheaper alternative for consumers. And the other big things he's done, is also very successfully, or it's at least taking off, especially in college campuses across the country, is the divestment movement, which he modeled on the South African apartheid divestment. And we've seen many, many, many institutions, really, it seems like driven by college campuses and colleges who are choosing not to invest in fossil fuels because they, in the long term, are a poor investment for our Earth and for society. So these three numbers are frightening, and this is in the section of the book which is just giving the state of the world. And so he doesn't offer more solutions than those two to fighting the petroleum industry. However, he does have a chapter further down in the book in which he'll outline some more, give some more ideas. Thanks.